with my friends and people that I know, like people going through school, I'm always like, if it doesn't feel right early, it's probably not. Like there was warning signs for me, like when I was in school doing accounting, but I kind of ignored them because I had my eye on the prize. So it took me some more time to get through it to figure it out that it wasn't for me. So I just hope people like do what they actually like to do. I also think like, and this is different for everybody, and I mean some people, money is the motivator. It's fun for them to accumulate it and get more things, but for me personally, I found that like it does nothing for me. Like the more I have, it almost just stresses me out more. It's just like, okay, how am I going to lose this? Or how's this going to get burned out or not do the right investment or whatever is going to happen?
So welcome back to Journey to June. I'm your host, Wendy Basilico, and whether you're new to here or not, we are instigating your soul, and we are interviewing people that I've met on my path that I feel have lived an extraordinary journey so far that instigate who they're meant to be, and sometimes it's living really testing the norms. And this guest is no different. I've met him at my favorite coffee shop, Carve, and we got chatting, and I was like, you have to come on my podcast because he is in his own transition. So Jimmy Rozea, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
So Jimmy, give me like, where are you in your life in this moment? You came back to your hometown. Is this hometown?
Correct. Yeah, I grew up here. I lived here since I was in like fourth grade.
So definitely you're an explorer. I mean, you venture out in the world more than actually I interview. I'm choosing to interview him, and I'm like learning as we hadn't even taped yet. I was like, oh my God, you did that and that. So we're going to get into that. But tell me, like, where are you in your life right now in the sense of, like, are you comfortable? Are you doing what you love? Give me a little insight so then we can go down the path of your journey.
Yeah, I'm definitely in a transitionary stage, I'd say. But I kind of find myself settling in nicely. I'm working at, obviously, like you said, the coffee shop where you and I met. I definitely have a passion for coffee. I've loved it since I was probably too young to be drinking it. And then I'm also working at a bike shop now as like part sales, part mechanic, and it's another thing I love is like cycling and mountain biking. So I just wanted to like,
which is so cool for me because I moved here, and I was like, oh, I miss the mountains. I don't see these people that do mountain biking, and then here comes Jimmy in the midst of Carve, and I'm like, you mountain bike, you hike, you.
Well, we should clarify. I do more like road cycling and gravel cycling. The mountain biking is picking up. I'm trying to like buy my first legit mountain bike and get into it more. Awesome. Working at the bike shop, I get like dangerous deals on things. So
you get a little like using all the coffee money to purchase
and
things
the bike
you
shop,
love,
and the bike shop money for like pro deals.
Okay, so tell me how you this is how we got talking. I think because you were like, oh, I said, what else do you do? And you were saying, well, like I got this biking. I'm working at this biking shop, and you went into like how you got that. Like, how did you? Because it's not like you went in and said, I want to be hired.
No, I just walked in, and I don't remember what I was getting. Oh, I didn't have a tool. I work on a lot of my own bikes, and I didn't have a particular tool to get something done. It's one of those things where it's like a $200 tool, and you use it just to like make a quarter turn. So I just go into the bike shop and basically have the work. Hey, can you turn this for me? When I was walking in that day, I saw they needed some help. So.
What were you helping with? I feel like you were helping with something.
No, I wasn't helping. They were helping me.
They were helping you.
They were going to use that tool for me. And the mechanic in that particular store is always like super helpful to me. So I always liked going to him because he would always, do it quick and easy for me, charge me nothing or a very reasonable amount of money for it. So I walked in there and I was like, I saw you guys are looking for help. What kind of help are you looking for? They're like, we'll take anything. I was like, let's talk.
And do you know like how to work bikes and fix bikes prior?
I learned on my own. One of my friends really kind of taught me everything, and we just did it when I lived in California with him. We would just sit in our backyards and we would just tinker. And
where did you live in California?
Ventura.
Is that like LA-ish?
It's like just south of Santa Barbara, probably an hour and a half north, 90 miles north of LA, I think.
So like surfer too? Are you a surfer? No.
I'm not. I mean, I've gone on a surfboard, but I would
biking.
definitely not consider myself a surfer.
And was that after college you were living in California, or did you go to college?
No, yeah, I went to college. I went to Florida State.
Okay. And studied
accounting and finance.
Oh, this is juicy now.
Yeah.
So, accounting and finance, obviously, you go to college thinking, I've got to do what?
I went to college. I was definitely driven, like, it was funny to go back a little bit. I was never really good at school in high school. I was always just kind of messing around. And then I got to college in some weird way. I decided, like, I should probably take this a little more seriously. So I started getting good grades. I remember my parents were like, where the hell is this coming from? Like,
so you went to high school, all your grade school, and you're kind of like going through the motions.
Correct. I never cared. I cared about
you were
playing
in sports,
football
yeah.
and, chasing girls and doing
So you were kind of like wild a little bit.
I wasn't getting in a lot of trouble or anything like that, but I definitely wasn't focused on the things that my parents wished I was focused on.
Okay, so when this is interesting because I'm doing a lot of interviews with high school graduates, college graduates, and when you think of your grade, like growing up, high school, middle school, and not having that drive to learn, how do you describe why that was? Is it boredom? Like, what is that?
I just like when I got home from school, I refused to do homework. It was like I wanted to go outside and play with my friends and my brothers. We would play football or basketball or some sort of sport every single day after school. So, like, there was no way I was going to go home and sit down on the couch or sit down at the table and do homework. So my rule in high school was if I couldn't finish the homework in the classes after, I wasn't doing it. So basically, I would just like...
Even if you got a bad grade, you're like, meh,
whatever, I'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. And again, like, how do you, like, do you describe that because you're wired a certain way? Like, I'm so interested of watching kids. I just have a hard time with the way schools are for so long, and they're not embracing the joy that comes out of you by being outside and exploring and creating. So, like, when you think of how you were wired and how it was turned off in school, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think I just, like, didn't do well sitting still. There was a lot of, I don't want to, like, say people were bad teachers and stuff, but there's certain teachers that can, like, inspire you to be interested in things. Even, like, math teachers, if they're good enough, they can make it, like, interesting. But a lot of teachers, I don't feel like, are doing that. They're just, like, rolling through the motions on you. And, like, me as someone who needs, like, that stimulation to do something, I'm not going to just sit there and watch you, like, write on an overhead projector or read slides. That won't do anything for me. So then I'm just bored, and then I'm just waiting to go to the next class or do whatever I got to do.
So when you think of, like, the best teacher in your high school or whatever, or even if you didn't have one, how would you define, like, the teacher that inspires us? Because I exactly what you just said. Even in my daughter's school, like, you can see, and I don't think people go in with bad intentions. I just think they're not being challenged to come with different energy.
Yeah.
So, how do you describe, like, one, or maybe there was a teacher that really, like, made you think?
I have a couple.
Maybe there wasn't.
No, I definitely have a couple, especially, like, is this, like, purely high school and below?
Anything.
Yeah, I definitely had a couple in college where, like, I remember there was one class, you have to take, like, your undergraduate, what do you call them? Like, electives, I guess. Yeah. And I just signed up for, like, Western civilization. And I got this teacher, and he just, like, he basically made it story time. He would just talk about whatever he was talking about in the class. I didn't take a single note the entire class. I just sat there and listened to him because it was so good. It was so, like, the way he set it up. He was a good storyteller. Yeah. And I remember, like, the part I particularly liked in that class was, like, the French Revolution. I didn't know anything about it, didn't care about it, but he just made the story so good that I was, like, couldn't wait to come to class the next day to, like, hear it. So I feel like, the teacher having a little bit of, like, interest and passion and wanting people to, like, engage with them helps a lot. The way I kind of became an accountant or an accounting major was I originally was just going to go to a finance major, and then I had a teacher who did, like, the lower level accounting classes that you have to do to get into the College of Business. And she was just a good teacher. Like, she was just somebody who, like, encouraged you to do well and kind of laid out the rules like fair. There wasn't like huge curves and stuff like this. It was like you're gonna get what you get. And I don't know what she did in particular, but I just kind of clicked with her. And then I got like hundreds in both classes. Like the intro classes are finance, intro to finance, financial accounting, and intro to managerial accounting. I think I got 100 in both classes with her. So
I think I hear you say, like, the two things I hear, one is fair, like asking for commitment, but like being fair about it, expectations, but fair. And the other thing I heard was cool is the storytelling.
yeah,
To engage like in the passion of whatever they're teaching and making it around, especially when it comes to history or getting you engaged in that storytelling or the emotion of it.
yeah.
So cool.
And to be fair to them, those were both college professors. So like again, like I mentioned in the beginning, I for whatever reason decided I was gonna like I would skip class all the time in high school. The second I got my car, I was leaving campus as much as I could without getting caught. In college, no one's holding me to the fire to go to class, but for some reason I went. So there was just a part of a little growing up there too.
So more like your own accountability, owning that.
Yeah, I guess when you're saying like I'm paying for this, I might as well be there. I don't want to like pay for it twice, kind of thing. I don't know if that was what. Well, I don't know exactly what that trigger was, but it was there.
Yeah, I mean, are you wasting your time when you're investing? Somebody was just I saw a podcast and this guy was like, yeah, I just did. I went to take my SATs and I don't really care, and I just did abracadabra or something like whatever he said. He was just like, I just went down and I got less than, I forget. He's like, to sign the SATs, what do you get? I don't know what it is, but he was like, all of a sudden, like my friends were going to college and I was going to community, and I was like, okay, I'm better than this, and that's what I hear. Like something clicks.
Even my SATs, like I remember I was supposed to take them twice, and the first time I took them, I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I do remember I was out like all night, probably hanging out with some girl or something that I was supposed to do, because they were on Saturday, and I was like, I was a kid. I don't want to ruin my Friday night.
Exactly.
And then the next time I was supposed to take them, it was at like South Fork High School, and this was before like phones like are today. It was like you had to print out the MapQuest thing, and I don't know if MapQuest was wrong or I just couldn't figure it out, but I was too late to start, so I didn't even tell my parents. I just didn't show up. I just went and had my Saturday morning to myself with my friends at the beach.
Missed the test.
I just didn't even take it a second time. Just left.
So you got what you got from the first time.
Yeah, that was what I rolled with.
And you got into school. What would you tell, like, knowing what you know now or even through college, or that, like, spark that, like, got you to go to class even though someone didn't say you have to be there? What would you tell, like, high school kids with the experience that you had, go looking back? Is there something you would do different to tell yourself? Or it's exactly like any advice you would give someone that's like feels like they're going through the motions?
I think like obviously I probably put a lot of time and energy towards things that I don't care about anymore and focus on, but I don't look back and say like I wish I never did it. Like accounting is the perfect example. Like I'm going through it right now. I'm doing my CPE to keep my license active. I'd rather go scrub toilets for a living than go do accounting work, but I keep my license active. But because I'm proud of what I did to get it.
Yeah.
So again, would I go back and not be an accounting major? No, I think it worked out the way it did. Maybe I would have never showed up to do these cool things that we talked about at the coffee shop if I didn't have that grind of something I didn't like. So I think people need to stop thinking so far ahead. Just take it one day at a time. Like when I was in college, I was convinced I was doing the right major. I convinced myself of that.
By staying present? Or
no, just I had my eye on the prize. I thought like I was going to have a successful career and all these things.
It was more about the outcome.
Correct. So I literally picked accounting because I was getting good grades. I knew I wanted to be a business major, and accounting had the highest paying salary outside of college, like when you left.
So you picked it because you knew I'm going to make big money to go off and create a business or make a lot of money, and that's why I'm doing this course. Yeah,
I didn't hate it, but like if I knew I could have made more money being a finance. So the reason why I remember I left, I had a professor who was a finance professor. This was when I was already in the College of Business, and I was teetering with the idea of going to be an accounting major, but I was like, I'm still committed to the finance idea. So I talked to this professor who I liked, and I was like, I mentioned I'm thinking about going to accounting. He's like, why are you thinking that? I was like, I don't know. I did like the lower level classes with that teacher that I mentioned before, who I liked, and I was like, I did so well in them, and it was just like, it was almost just like a little bit of like an organizational class at that point. You know, you balance your debits and your credits and you do your thing. But he's like, if you can do the accounting, you can always do the finance. So he's like, go change your major right now. This is coming from somebody who was very successful in his finance career. So I went and left his office and changed it. And from that point forward, I knew it was like a more difficult route to get through school, but like I definitely had a little bit of like an ego to it too, where I was like, oh, I'm doing a hard major.
Like, tough guy.
Yeah, which isn't good, but like, you know, at that point.
What did you feel like? So you do this, you switch majors,
Well, I actually just double majored.
You double majored.
Yeah,
okay.
Which was, it sounds better than it is. I only had to take like 4 classes to get because there's so many of the accounting classes that like, what's the word I'm looking for? Where like, it covers the finance class if you take the accounting class. So I only had to take 4 finance classes, and I got a second degree.
So you had two degrees leaving college.
Yeah.
At the age of whatever, 21, 22. What was your like, I'm gonna go get this great job and like get married, and like, what was your frame of mind getting out of college? Because I feel like there's not a lot of conversation. It's just like, get a job. Yeah. So how, like, talk to me about it.
So I got a job with a firm down in South Florida. They're like a national firm. It's a good firm to work for. So I was, again, proud of myself for that. I didn't think too much about like marriage and stuff, but I was just thinking about like, I was hungry on the career path kind of thing. Like I wanted to like go places with it. And I quickly burned out from that first job.
And how long was that? Like, how long were you at the first job?
A little over a year.
And burnt out because you had to work crazy hours, burnt out because you didn't have joy about it, burnt out because you didn't love the environment. Like,
I would say the first 2. The environment I worked at was great. The people I worked with were really good. The hours were insane. It was a lot. You know, I think it was like 70 hours a week minimum during busy season. And then I didn't like it. You know, like, it was one of those things you just like, you're sitting there and like, you have to figure out a problem. You know, you can figure it out, but you're like, I just don't feel like going through this process to do it because I just don't care.
So you're like going, again, through the motions, waking up in the morning, going to this job that doesn't fulfill you, really.
Correct.
So what happened? Give me.
So the way I quit was actually pretty funny. I remember I was working 7. So what happened with the firm, there was like a little short staffing that, not that the firm's fault, there was like some departures right before busy season. So our schedules went from bad to worse. And I just got burnt out. I remember I was like told my boss at the time, we had different bosses based on what job we were on, but I was like, I'm going to take Sunday off because I've been working too much. So I went golfing with my dad and his friends.
And what did he say? Like, was he supportive of that? Or
I mean, he knew I was working my ass off because like he lived up here in Jupiter. I was living down in like Hollywood at the time. The office I worked at was out of Fort Lauderdale. And but when I had clients up here, I would just stay at his house, avoiding the hour and a half drive. And he would see me. I'd come home and get home like 11, 12 o'clock at night. I'd work until like 2 in the morning, go to bed, and I'd be out the door by like 6:30 to go do it again. Like I was working those kinds of hours. Barely. I mean, I was always like a pretty skinny guy, like good shape. I blew up in terms of my weight. Like I got unhealthy and
you weren't doing anything for yourself.
Nothing for myself. It was just work. And so I went golfing with him and his friends, and one of his friends said something to me. They were like, oh, what are you doing? They're talking about work. And I was like, do you like it? I'm like, no. He's like, then why are you doing it? I was like, good point. I'll quit tomorrow. The one good thing about that job was I was so busy I couldn't spend my money. So I was like, I saved up quite a bit. And so I quit. The next day I put my 2 weeks
Literally
notice.
That day.
2 weeks.
Someone said something and you said,
I was like, I'm done. I don't need to do this.
So how do you make, like, I'm just part of the whole Live Your June and like knowing who you are. And I think some people don't have the guts, even if someone said that, to go, oh, I'm out. So why were you wired, or what are you wired like to make a quick decision like that?
I had a little bit, well, I don't know why I'm wired that way. That's still
Or
true.
How do you describe that? Like, is it a feeling?
It was just one of those things where like, I'm trying to go back and remember the feeling. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I know I can figure it out, and it can't be worse than this.
I love that.
I don't know what exactly like I was going to do. And I I did have a little bit of a safety net because I owned a house with my older brother still in Tallahassee.
Okay.
So I knew I could go back there and I had a place to live. I was already paying for it.
Yeah.
Because we were splitting the bills.
I mean, when you look around at young people, even in that time, or when you see people, what do you see people that go to work and then they're miserable and in the state that you were, burnt out, not taking care of themselves? I mean, do you see friends that like stay in it, stay in the game just to make a living? I'm saying I'm just a big believer that you got to staying in it. There's a time to stay in it and a time to like jump.
Yeah, I definitely...
Because you jump pretty quick.
I jump quick. I mean, this first sign of struggle, I shouldn't say first sign of struggle. It was hard for a while, but I was like, just not happy. I knew I needed something different. And I definitely see people do it, like chasing whatever it is, whether it's like, 2.5 kids and the white picket fence, and they want to keep this job because that's going to make that available. And I see people do that stuff, and I mean...
Yeah, I mean, everybody's
it's their
different.
life to live.
I know, it's 100%. I think as long as you're clear with why you're doing it, and that you can handle, maybe doing the job is okay as long as you have an outlet to create happiness or something.
Totally. I know people in my life that they don't like their job, but they figured out a way to make a good amount of money, and when they're not working, they have all the fun in the world.
Yep.
And they can balance that.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm not good at that balancing act. When I'm miserable even for a few hours a day, I don't like it. Like, I want to be enjoying what I'm doing, and it's just the way I'm built.
Okay, and I love that. And it's, again, like knowing how you're built. Like, some people are okay with like,
I'll grind through this,
and
then I know when I get off work I can go have fun, whatever that may be. For me, like, I mean, again, part of this, I think, in the defense of me, is like, accounting is not something I care about.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sitting there grinding on something that I don't like. And also with accounting, like, the way that the industry worked was the hours were meant to be long. I mean, they would, like, the culture in the accounting industry was like, busy season's going to suck.
Yeah.
Like, they would pride themselves on, like, how miserable they could be.
Isn't it funny? But, I mean, someone likes it. Some people thrive on it.
I haven't been in public accounting in quite a few years at this point. I did hear, like, the new generation, it's kind of funny because, COVID happened and, like, this work remote thing kind of became a thing. And this isn't firsthand knowledge. This is just, like, kind of what I've heard. But, like, they, like, refuse to come to work. And they'll be like, I'm working 40 hours. Which part of me is like, that's bullshit. That's not what this is supposed to be. And then another part of me is like, good for them.
Yeah,
like,
it's funny, in the golf industry, there's it's very seasonal, especially up north. But it's, you are in the service industry, you're showing up, no matter rain or, you're there. And there's not really, in the golf industry, there's not really, this is your job title. So it's not like you can just like take off, or you're there for the members. And the burnout, in my belief, is similar. Like, you're not working numbers and you're not sitting behind a desk, but you're also like, I don't want to say taken advantage of, but it's like, there's not a care that you actually have a wedding to go to, or you actually have a life outside. Yeah. And I'm sure you felt the same. And I think they're, like, a lot of industries are rethinking it through COVID, because I do think golf is trying to go, oh, God, these are human beings working and not just like, robots.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I hear you saying. Okay, so you quit. You're not wired to like hang out there. You quit really fast. And then where does your journey take you? Because you're going to figure it out, but how do you figure it out?
So I wasn't at that point ready to leave accounting. I just knew I didn't want to work in that environment right then and there. So I ended up getting a job with the state, and I worked there for a few years. And it kind of was funny. It like rubber band the other way. It went from like total craziness on working to like not having enough to do.
It's like boredom.
Yeah, I would go to work and I'd kind of be like twiddling my thumbs a little bit. But I mean, the one thing I can say is like I got in shape again, started going to the gym, started running and doing all that kind of stuff. So like I was able to like at least have time to do stuff that I liked. Plus I was up in Tallahassee again, like I mentioned before. My brother and I owned a house together. So I was back with my brother, and we've always been close, so that helps. And then I had other friends that lived up there, because I had friends, the ones that actually got me the job with the state. So
so the part of it is getting the experience. Like you've gotten the state experience and the, kick ass, like
and that's what my dad said. He goes, you went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Like, so I did that for a few years, and just to kind of, lived life through there. It was nothing crazy. I ended up getting another job in which kind of pulled those two sides to the middle, and I ended up working for like a smaller firm over in like St. Petersburg, Florida. And I had like the best boss in the world. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Made my life as easy as you could be in that sector, and I still didn't like it. So that was where I was kind of starting to the wheels started to fall off a little bit.
Like, and kind of, what the hell do I do now? Because I've spent all this focus. Did you go down that rabbit hole of like, what, I studied this, I've got all these degrees, and here I am like 3 jobs in, and I'm still.
So it was a lot of things that kind of made me fully pull the trigger on it. So like we mentioned, so I always liked being outdoors. The hiking thing wasn't new. Like I wanted to go, my spare time, I wanted to go places where there were mountains and go on hikes. So you
traveled always in your life, or just in your 20s?
We traveled pretty well when we were kids. We weren't like going to Europe and stuff, but my dad owned a restaurant in Telluride, so we would go out there over the summers and like winter breaks and stuff, and I got to see that, which is obviously a beautiful area.
Does he still own it?
No, he sold it back in 2006. Yeah, I wish. I'd probably be working there if he still owned it.
Killing it. We might go there this summer.
Straight ski bum.
Oh, awesome.
So I traveled around the United States. I have family up in New York, and so we'd go up there and we'd go to upstate New York and go in the summers and stuff like that. So it's not like I didn't go anywhere, but I wasn't like traveling the world or anything like that.
But you had the itch. Like you always had.
I just remember when we go to Colorado, like I always wanted to go on hikes. Like it was to the point where like I didn't even know what a hike was sometimes. So I would just the restaurant was like right at the end of one of the ski runs, and I would just go hike up the ski run just because
young.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, and I just knew if I went up and down, I couldn't get lost, so I would just go do that kind of stuff. And then as I got older, I knew I wanted to get more and more into it. A friend that I met in college, who I'm still friends with to this day, he was the one that kind of got me into this idea of backpacking, actually bringing a tent and your food.
How old are you at that time?
When I was in college with this?
When you pulled the plug and this friend got you into, you're saying he got you into
he got
young.
me into in college. When I was in college, we started doing little overnight trips and stuff like that. Because at that point, my family never grew up camping or doing anything like that.
So you were camping?
A little bit here and there, overnight trips on the Panhandle and stuff from college. So I always had that itch through that first accounting firm. The second one, I was back with that friend because he was working in that for the state as well. So him and I would go do little weekend trips with one another and stuff as well. And then we actually planned up a trip. This was the biggest trip I did to that point. Him and I remember what I did. I started working at the state pretty quickly, and one of my best friends moved to Hawaii. And how did it all work? Oh, sorry. Let me back up. We have another friend who, these guys are still my 3 best friends to this day. So I had one friend who was living in Yosemite, just as a straight climbing bum. He would just go out there and live in a hard bottom tent and go climb mountains, rock climbing every day, living like a straight dirtbag in the sense of not showering, not dirtbag in terms of shady morals. So I was going to go work for him for 3 months, and I got the sabbatical, whatever you want to call it, approved from the state. Long story short, it didn't work out with Yosemite. There was a change in the contract, so I got the job, then they changed contracts, and then I didn't have the job anymore because now there's a new contract owner of the resort in Yosemite National Park. So I ended up me and this friend, we ended up doing a trip where we went to Montana and Canada. And
Where in Montana?
Well, we met our friend that lives in Bozeman, and then we went up to Glacier.
I love it.
And then we went up to Banff.
Yeah.
And then we came back down to the Tetons. And then it was 2 weeks overall.
So driving.
We road tripped. We flew out to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And then we drove from Salt Lake
all the way
up and then back down to Salt Lake. And then I went to Hawaii and stayed in Hawaii for a month with my friend. And
you're on a sabbatical.
It was
you got time off from work.
2 months or something like that.
You opened the can of worms.
That was probably the opening can of worms.
That's what happens. I just say to anybody. But they're so beautiful.
Well, I remember my dad calling me because my dad's a hard worker kind of guy.
I don't even want to know what he said because I'll.
Well, he didn't mind the fact that I was doing it, but I remember I was in Hawaii. My friend was working, so I would go do my own thing through the day, and I was like, I was literally just like waking up, bringing either the boogie board or the surfboard to the beach, doing a little run around like the park that they had there.
Yeah.
And my dad calls me and he's like, "You're probably getting bored, aren't you?" I'm like, "If I didn't have bills to pay, I could do this the rest of my life.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this is great." He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "The last 5 days I've done the same thing. Like, I wake up, I eat a bowl of oatmeal, and I go to the beach. And then I hang out at the beach until I'm tired, and then come back and wait for Matt to come home, and then we go do something." So that was like probably the first line of like,
he was like, he was like, when are you coming home? When are
Well,
you getting back?
he was more saying like, it's boring not working. Like, you need to have something to do every day. And I was like, I'm good. Honestly, the only thing I remember at that time, I was dating somebody at that point, and I remember I was like, we kind of just started dating, and then I went and did this huge trip. And I remember at that point I was like, it's still fresh into the relationship. I wanted to get back to see her, but other than that, I was like, if it wasn't for her, I probably would have stayed.
Yeah.
I might have not never came back because the job that I had wasn't
So that was the opening that joy in or excitement by exploring and kind of shutting down.
Yeah.
To seeing like what brings you excitement.
Yeah, for sure. And then so for there, I kind of just, I had these itches to do all these different kinds of trips, and like the backpacking thing kept staying in the back of my head. So originally there was like this trail called the John Muir Trail, which goes through Lake Yosemite National Park and a couple other national parks in that area. It's like 200 miles, which to me sounded insane. So I was like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. And then I was like looking up how to get permits for it. And long story short, the permit system it's rough to get permits for it.
Yeah.
But in the process of finding that, I found out there's a longer trail that encompasses the entire John Muir Trail called the Pacific Crest Trail. So from the point I saw that, it's like 2,600 miles. It goes.
Where does that start? Yeah.
Starts in Mexico. Well, it starts in the Mexican-California border in a little town called Campo, California. And then it ends in Canada in a little place called Manning Park.
Okay.
And then the second I saw that, I was like, ooh, I want to do this. And
how many miles total?
It's like 2,000. They keep changing it.
So you went from 200 to like just
to 2,000.
To fit in the 200, you went to the whole big.
And then like that impulsive, like I'm quitting tomorrow kind of thing. I didn't think like, oh, can I do this? It was like, that's what I want to do.
And with your friend or solo?
At this point, I would have loved to go on with somebody, but it was early on. Again, I was still in that relationship, and like, it was just a thought that I was like, ooh, this is something I want to do.
Like you got.
But it was like, it's like one of those things. At this point, it felt like something like, I want to own $1 million mansion isn't anything anymore. I want to own a $50 million mansion. It almost felt like one of those dreams at this point. Like
just this excitement in your
gut. Like, how am I going to actually do it? I
have to figure this out.
Yeah, you're like, how am I actually going to do it?
Yeah.
Like, it's a goal that's far down the road, it felt like. But I knew like, it was in my head.
It reminds me, like when somebody said, and it's totally different, but when I was teaching in Harlem, I want to change the world. And here I am in Harlem, and I'm looking around. I'm like 2 years in, and I feel like I'm just dead. Like I go in wanting to like change the world, but I'm like, oh my God, half the people are on for the union. They have tenure, and they're like just showing up.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't. And then one day I was playing golf with my dad and I hated golf. and two guys were like, you're really good. I was like, yeah, I am good. Like, I don't even know how. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but I'm going to be pro. And I don't know how. Like, it's kind of what you're saying. Like, I don't know how I'm going to walk these miles.
Yeah. For me, it was more of like, well, I didn't know anything about it. I was just in the baby steps of it. But for me, it was more of like, how am I going to get off that much time from work? Like, you can't leave work. Like, that's unacceptable.
The trap of like, and I'm not telling the listeners to go quit their job and go do this, but there's something, maybe. But okay, so talk to me. Like, how do you figure out how to make it work, or you just cut cold, quit, and say I'm going?
So, as I mentioned, I moved to like the Clearwater area, and I was working for that firm in St. Pete. I was in a relationship at that point. And to cut a long story short, the relationship ended, and I really didn't care to be in that area, and I was only there for the relationship. So that happened, and then I was like, well, I know I don't want to live here anymore. I really liked my boss. Like, I loved my boss. He was one of those people, he got a lot out of me because, like, I didn't want to make his life harder. So there was probably times there where like that breakup wasn't easy on me. So there was definitely times there where I was probably a little distracted when I was trying to do my best, but I did my best to not make his life worse because I liked him.
Yeah.
And so I told him, well, I shouldn't say it. So how did it go? I basically just decided. I remember I was in Tallahassee for some reason, and I just like randomly thought about the PCT after that breakup, and I was like, man, I should try to do that because I know I'm going to move. So like maybe this will work out. And I kind of knew the timing, like when you had to start. So I went online and I opened up like the registry system, and in dumb luck, that was the day the permits opened.
Just the day you see. It's not dumb luck.
So
the
I was
universe
like,
sending a message there, buddy.
So I immediately texted like my best friend that lives in Hawaii, and I was like, hey, you want to do this with me? And he was like, I'm on the fence. I'm like, all right, should we get permits though? Like we can always back out. He's like, sure. So I signed up for both permits, him and I. And I remember
the day you go research, the permits are open.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I was like, so I got permits for both of us. And I remember like after I put my phone down, after I got the permits, I remember saying to myself, he's not going to go. And I'm still fucking going.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not going. Because like I knew at that point I couldn't wait for people.
Yeah.
Like we all have our own.
waiting. I like that.
So
we have a tendency to like not want to do things we don't know how to do by ourselves.
So I went to work the next day, and I basically said like, I'm starting this trail on this day, and like busy season. I started on May 9th. And I was like, how do you want me to navigate getting you through busy season? What day do I need to work for you until that doesn't put you in a terrible spot? I think I told him this in like January, maybe even earlier. And he was like, can you work until, April 20th, whatever it was. And I was like, done. So that was my last day.
So let me ask you this. When you told him, because you had a good relationship, you really obviously admired him and you worked hard for him to make his life easy. When you told him that, was he receptive? Was he like, yeah, do this? Or was no?
He thought I was insane.
He thought you were insane, but was he supportive?
Definitely.
So that's pretty, that to me is a leader.
I mean, he knew I was in a rough spot.
Yeah.
Like he knew I didn't want to be where I was. And
got it.
So he
knew that. Like as your boss,
yeah.
He knew that you were struggling.
Like I'm sure he saw my work go down, and he didn't once give me shit for it because he knew I was probably just dealing with other shit. But yeah, so he's still my dad's accountant to this day.
Wow.
So we're still kind of somewhat in touch.
Cool.
But
how long did that take you? So you go out there and you start in Mexico.
Yeah. So.
So dang cool. So it's not on you told me it's not on the coast.
No, it's up on like the ridge lines. So you hike like more towards the middle of the state. So yeah, I finished my job there. I remember my grandma passed away like a little bit before then. So I went to New York. We went to her funeral, and then I flew from New York to California. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I've done my research like this whole time between when I decided I was going and when I actually left. I mean, when I get home from work, I was researching gear and how to do this and how to do that. And there's a lot of information out there, obviously. I mean, this is a few years ago. Now there's even more information. Mm-hmm. Now it's...
So when is this? Like 3 years ago?
No, this was 2018.
Okay. Well, right before COVID.
This was 2017. I started in 18, but like at this point, it was probably still like the end of the year. So I was like researching everything and figuring out what I got to do. But at this point, I didn't really ever do what they call through hiking, which is what this is. So I fly out to San Diego, and there's these people called trail angels that like help you along the way. And like one of the most famous trail angels on the Pacific Crest Trail were these people. They're called Scout and Frodo. They are like a retired couple, I think, and they own a house in San Diego. He was like the director of the PCTA, which is the Pacific Crest Trail Association, for a long time. And they would open up their house to like hundreds of hikers a year. They would pick you up from the airport, shuttle you back to their house, feed you, and then get you a ride from their house to the southern terminus at the border of Mexico and Canada. Yeah. So while I'm there, there's all these other hikers coming in, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh, I realize I have no fucking idea what I'm doing here. Like,
because they're all fit, or they have all the right
I mean, they were probably all in the same boat as me, but I was like just
panicking
a little bit.
Yeah.
So
what did I sign up for?
Exactly. And there's some people there that are super fit and they've done this before. And there was one guy who was starting the next day after me, and he was going for the fastest known time. He's actually from Jupiter too, oddly enough. He was going for the fastest known time that year. And so like you see these people that are like, they're going to go out and try to do like 30
they're
miles a day.
Extreme elite doing things
and then
to push their edge.
And then there was people that you would see there that were like 60 pounds overweight, getting ready to go too. So
is it again, I always want to walk the Camino path or in Spain. Is it known in the U.S. to be something like that, or not really?
What do you mean?
Like, it's more mountainous than the Camino.
It's known to be pretty strenuous. So the way the trail kind of works is like the first 700 miles, you're going straight through the Southern California desert.
Yeah.
And I was kind of just putting it in my head before I ever started as like, that's your test. Once you get through the desert, you get into the high Sierras, and that's like Candyland. That's the beautiful area with all the high alpine lakes and huge granite peaks. So my whole thought was get through the desert. And
because it's
hot. I was thinking, I don't look at pictures of things I do beforehand. I just get there and want to see it as I get there.
Cool.
So I was thinking the desert was going to be gross and just like sandy, hot, and not fun.
Yeah.
So the first day we get started, and I couldn't have had a worse first day. I ran out of water. I threw up from like heat exhaustion. I ended up having to like sleep under a tree for a few hours. I was planning on trying to get to like 20 miles, which is like where the first water source was after we started. And I made it 15, and I couldn't go any further.
And when you're throwing up, sleeping on the side of the tree, are people helping you, or you're like,
yeah, so like there's a lot of people that do this trail. It wasn't like it was like I'm the only guy out there kind of thing. And yeah, someone gave me a little bit of water, and then I took the nap. And when I woke up, I saw a little bit of a headache, but I felt okay. And then there was actually a dude. He ran a little like side hustle. He'd come by on his dirt bike at night, and he'd bring a jug of water and a bunch of weed that he would sell to people and give water to help people that needed it. So, the first day I actually kept a journal out there, which I never journaled in my life. But I figured like a lot of people when you like, excuse me, a lot of people when you'd see like the what to do, what not to do. A lot of people said, keep a journal. It's cool. Yeah. And actually pretty recently, like the first time I actually went back, I never read any of it. Or recently I went back and read my journal just because I kept it. I just never wanted to go, it's like almost one of those things like you're waiting for it to be cringy.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it and saying in there, and I'm not, when you read it, you remember the feeling.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know what I got myself into. I don't know how this is going to work out, but if I finish this, it will 100% be the hardest thing I ever done in my life. And I remember being like, I remember how like shitty I felt that night because I was like, I was sick. I had a headache. I wasn't able to like eat because I was still kind of like, my stomach was still turning from like the heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
But I knew I had to keep going. Like I wasn't going to quit on day one. Like pride or ego, whatever you want to call it. There was no way I was going to stop like that.
Yeah.
So, I kept going. The second day was better. The third day was better. And I remember being like a week into it and just being like, this is it. This is the fucking best thing I ever done. There's no way I'm fucking stopping. And
so what do you tell the people listening not to go, they have to go climb, but learning that about yourself or learning like the grind, something, put yourself in a situation that like pushes your edge. How would you give advice to the audience that feels flat in their life or feels like kind of going through the motions?
Well, I think like we can even kind of go back to what I said with the accounting stuff. Like I had a big hurdle and I stopped. I mean, it wasn't one day, but I had a big hurdle and I stopped. But with this, I loved it. Like I hate being like cliche and stuff, but this was something that was like, there was like a burning desire for me to do this inside. Whereas accounting, pretty quickly within when I got into the career, I had my first 6 months on the job where maybe I was like still excited to be doing it, and then that wore out. Whereas like this,
like, it was like you're fueling you.
Yeah, like, and as the trail goes on, like, I mean, PCT is a pretty nice trail. I've done other ones now that are more difficult, but you have great days. Most of the days on PCT are nice. You're in California. The weather's beautiful. It's like we got lucky in the desert. Like,
so you're setting up camp. I mean, like, so where are you getting your food? Where are you getting your water? Is there just like certain spots that?
Yeah, I should explain better what I'm doing.
Sorry.
So no, it's fine. I didn't explain. So the way the general idea of the logistics of it works is you're trying to complete a continuous footpath from Mexico to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you obviously can't carry food for 2,000 miles, and you can't carry,
Yep.
that many supplies.
Yep.
So what you'll do is you'll hike until you get to a road, essentially, or a town. And if the road will get you into a town, you'll hitchhike into the town. And what you'll do is you'll logistically look at, okay, so if I get into this town, I might have this many miles to the next one. So I need X number of food to get to the next place. And basically you're breaking it up. It's almost like a bunch of like 3 to 10 day backpacking trips, all done consecutively.
Got it.
And there's days where you sometimes say like, I'm going to spend the night in town. I'm not going to come back out. I want to shower, do my laundry, call my family.
Yeah, of course.
Do that kind of stuff. And then there's sometimes like you're injured or you just need a day off and you'll stay in 2 nights.
Yeah.
And, you'll take an entire day off of 0 hiking. And that happens too.
So how long did it take you total?
It took me like 5 months I think it was 1 day short of 5 months.
5 months.
I started on May 9th and I ended on October 8th.
Do you go through Truckee or do you go?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that.
Yeah, we did. I didn't realize what you were doing when you
said,
"Oh yeah."
You get off at I think I've been to Truckee. We mentioned it, but you get off at Donner Pass.
Yep.
And
amazing.
then
amazing. That
so the funny thing was like I was out of the 3 people in my group. There was like a bigger bubble around us, but there was 2 other people that I hiked with. Like the 3 of us hiked pretty much exclusively the entire trail together, plus or minus a little bit of time. And I was the guilty one most of the time of being like, let's stay in town, let's get some beers, let's have a good time. Like, and they were like, we got to keep moving, keep moving. So when we started kind of late. And generally, when people start this trail, so your windows, there are windows. You can't start too early
because you're going to get the snow.
Yeah, by the time you get to the high Sierras, the snow melt wouldn't be there, and the passes can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
But you don't want to start too late because the desert gets too hot.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of do it. So we kind of pushed it a little late when we got through, but we kind of went fast through the desert and basically caught that bubble, we'll call it, of like average pace.
Yeah.
But then when we got to the Sierras, we were so happy to be there, we slowed down. So we kind of lost them again. But at this point, then your next barrier is basically northern Washington.
Yeah.
Because you got to get there before it gets too cold as well.
So cool.
So I was very guilty of us like wanting to go. Like we went into Mammoth and I loved it. We ended up staying like 2 or 3 nights at Mammoth.
So you're like the instigator to like.
There was a couple other people that were worse than me, but like I was easily convinced. And so I remember when we got to Truckee, we made a deal before we got there. We were like, we're not going to stay the night. And we get there. I'm like, fuck, I shouldn't have made that deal. This place is great.
Yeah.
But we kept our word.
Donner Lake. Oh, so many memories. So it takes you a little over 5 months. When you think of that trip, 2 questions. Who was like the coolest person you met that like, or like a story about somebody that like made you go, oh my God, that guy's awesome, or that person's awesome?
Dude, there's so many cool people. I could never pick one.
Okay.
Like everyone you meet out there is like, man, like you meet people for short periods of time and you have like a bond with them.
Yeah.
And again, I hate to sound cliche and stupid, but like there's a difference when you talk to people because like you're out in the middle of nowhere and you got no service. Yeah. So like at nighttime when we're all sitting there making our crappy dinners, like, dehydrated mashed potatoes or ramen or couscous, whatever you're eating for dinner, like everyone's sitting in a circle talking. No one's got their phone out.
Connecting.
We're all talking to one another.
Yeah.
And the thing I remember pretty early on, at that point I was like, I was a CPA. Mm-hmm. And so I thought I was like, but you were out there talking and you have like a group of people and like, I did that as one guy with maybe a lawyer or whatever you get. But then you get all these people that are like talking. They're the most interesting people to listen to. They have the best shit to say. Mm-hmm. And, one night we did a little like, what does everybody do? And like some of the most interesting people were like, I'm a failed musician. Like, I don't got 2 pennies to rub together. I work in, someone else was like, I work in the restaurant industry and like, don't know what the hell I want to do with my life. But like, but the cool thing is like, when we sit ourselves in like these regular environments that we find ourselves in, like, you go to places that you want to be around the types of people that you want to hear about. So like, as a CPA at that point in my life, I went to places where there were professionals in the same area, and I only listened to them. I didn't want to hear what the broken musician had to say because that wasn't interesting to me. But out there, he was the only one I wanted to fucking listen to.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting when you say that because I love hearing people's journeys. Like I could sit here for hours talking to you and learning from you. And my mom works with this guy for painting. She got into painting when my dad died. She's been doing it 20 years. And this guy that she goes to, he teaches people, but he also takes care of his wife that's like got a disability, like she's really sick, and he's introverted and amazing artist, but not showy. Yet when you actually talk to him, he's like invented a piece of something that went up to space. Incredible.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is so valid, is when we're in our little cocoon of our, golf community or whatever community, work community, we're missing stories of phenomenal people, whatever reason. Maybe it's the way our society is. How do you explain it? Because you've done this. How do you see it? You see the world different than going on that trip or all the different things you've done. Like, how do you see when you look at the norm?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I was just saying, like in the sense of, I think people find themselves like hanging out in circles that they want to be around, and it kind of makes this environment of just hearing what you want to hear or being around what you want to be around.
Safe.
Yeah, and there's no one challenging you, and like, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that like, again, we wouldn't find ourselves in the same circles. We wouldn't think like we agree on things, but we find out, yeah, there's little things we disagree on, but like, I love that person. They're awesome. Yeah. And I think people just nowadays it's worse than ever where people can't talk about anything.
So what would you get, knowing what you know, what you experienced and what you're saying, what do you wish society was more like, or what do you recommend people to get out of their shell of their little?
I don't know. I mean, for me to point people in a direction seems silly because
your experience.
Yeah.
What do you, your own experience?
For me, it's always been recently I've been trying to do this more. Do your best today. You don't know what the hell's going to happen tomorrow. I've gotten into running and ultra distances. I don't say that in a braggy way, but people will start to say oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And for me, I'm I want to do it because I want to see what I can do. And you take it one day at a time. Tomorrow I can get in a car accident. And wouldn't it suck if I broke my legs tomorrow where I was shit, I didn't want to run this marathon, or I didn't want to run this because I didn't want to hurt my knees. Well, guess what? Now my knees are fucked and I'll never know if I can do it at all. So I take it as a sense of I want to do what I can do today. So I like running 100-mile races. Is it good for me? Probably not. But there's something that it does up here and something that it does in here for me that I can't explain to people. And you can't fucking put your words to it. People what's it like running 100 miles? You can't fucking explain it.
Remind me of Chad Wright and Jesse Itzler. They do a lot of those running. They have ran. I don't know if you've ever seen his stuff, but you remind me of when I get obsessed with watching them. Just how, oh my God, this guy can run this much, or it's the last man standing. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
But also I did a thing called 29-0-29 where you're climbing the elevation of Mount Everest, but so you climb up and then you take a gondola down and you have 36 hours. So it's more like someone like me that maybe isn't as elite or ultra.
I'm far from elite.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, but still can put themselves in a challenging situation to see what's in me. And when I was training, I had COVID and I was training for it. And I remember one of my sister-in-laws was like, why would you torture yourself? I was like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm doing it. I just know that I want to see if I'm capable. And to tell you the truth, I learned that I kind of copped out. Because I didn't train because of COVID, I used that in my mind as and then I pulled my groin and I hit the lightning was coming on me at night when we had to climb at night. And then it was just crazy. Who you surround yourself with really can put your little pity party or victim party and make you stop what you're challenging yourself to do. So whether it's in society or work, or I surrounded myself around one girl that kind of allowed me to wimp out. So I did over half, but even if I failed, just keep going.
Yeah.
So that was I would go back and do it.
Yeah. And
anyway, I mean, I get what you're saying.
But my point to the original question is what I've been doing, and like, is it right? I don't know. Time will tell. But yeah, just focus on doing everything right today. Like, be a good person today. Yeah. Don't get mad over stupid shit today. If you break things down into that sense, you know, you wake up in the morning, I got to get this done and I got to get this done. Do it, and then you're good. Then you can go do whatever you want.
Such great advice.
And like, people like to, I've been guilty of this at times too. Like, this is something I'm working on still. But like, people like to sit there and think like, the goal is this, and it's, you know, 5,000 steps away. And then what happens is like, you know, they have a little setback and it just collapses it. Whereas if you just do these little consistency things, you know, the setbacks don't matter because you're only worrying about this one day. So you can go up, back, up, back, but you're still working. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And like,
so speaking, I love that because I know you're in a transition. A transition, should I say that? Like, are you going to be a coffee person your whole life? Or are you going to be like running the bike store? Maybe. I don't know. But like, when you have done all this study, you've done this travel, knowing the people you've met, the excitement that you have, like, where is your head right now in, I don't want to say like who you see yourself as at this moment?
Man, I don't know.
Because I know when I spoke to you, I feel like, I guess this is what drew me to have this conversation is in the unknown, you know, you're getting jobs in the moment, but like in the unknown, there's a lot of people that want to direct you, go like, how could you need a real job? Like, why are you not doing this?
Yeah.
So how give me that. Cause there's a lot of people that go through these moments and like, how do you manage that?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is kind of what we're alluding to. We mentioned this before. Like when we talked at the coffee shop, like I'm constantly getting pressure from my family. You need to go back and be a CPA. You need to go back and be a CPA. You need to go do this. You need to go do that. And I don't care. It just falls off my shoulder because I don't listen to them. Because I know I'm the one that has to do it. They're not the one that gets cooped up in the office. So, I don't know what's next. Like, I don't worry about it though, because like, just like I knew when the moment was right, I'll quit the right job, or I know when the moment's right, I'll do it. So right now I'm super happy with what I'm doing as work. I'm not embarrassed to tell people. Like, I try to make it a point. When someone asks me what I do for work, I don't say, oh, I'm a CPA, but I'm not doing that right now. I work at a coffee shop and a bike shop. No, fuck that. I work at a bike shop and I work at a coffee shop. Both jobs pay under $20 an hour. I don't give a shit. I'm happy doing them. Like, and if something comes up where I have an opportunity to do something that not pays me more, but drives me more, I'll fucking take it. I'll do it like that. I mean, I'm obviously friends with the owner of the coffee shop. I don't want to put her in a bad situation, but she knows who I am. She knows that I'm liable to turn on any. Yeah. And yeah, that's the way it goes. Like right now, I'm not sitting here saying like I have these goals. I don't have any goals right now. Like people are going goals. I don't know what my goals are. My goal is I have a 100-mile race signed up for, and I want to do better in it. Like that's it. I got to train for it. I got a puppy. I just bought a puppy, and I want to make sure he's well trained, or she's well trained. I want to make sure she's happy and healthy and can do I want her to run with me. That's my goal right now, training her. And like,
so cool. But okay, so when you describe yourself, knowing like all the journey you've been on, like from like doing, I don't want to say doing what we're supposed to do or doing what the norm, go into college, get the job, but then like, oh no, this is not me. I'm gonna go do these random things. But that fuels me, meet extraordinary humans. When you describe yourself right now, like what 3 words come to mind? I know.
Myself. Oof.
Yeah, but like what makes you make those moments that you're like, I'm out.
Impulsive? Is that what we're saying?
I don't care. Whatever that means to you.
I don't know, like 3 words. I guess I'm pretty impulsive. But like I'm passionate. Like when I decide I'm going to do something, like I'm going to do it. And
you're all in.
I'm all in. Like that's why I picked, when I found the John Muir Trail, it was 200 miles. It was cool. But then I found the bigger one. I'm all in. I'm doing the whole fucking thing. I ain't doing half of it. I'm doing a section of it. I want to do the whole thing. But it has to fall into those categories of like something I'm passionate about. And then I don't know what the third one would be. I like to think I'm thoughtful. Like I care about my friends. I care about my family, and try to like make sure everyone's okay around me. But yeah, I mean, I'm not perfect.
Cool. Who's your biggest influence, would you say?
Man, I don't know. I take a lot from a lot of people. Like, we kind of hated on my dad in some ways, like, telling me to do things I don't want to do. But he's also taught me a lot of shit to do, like, to work at things. Like, you can't quit at the first sign of difficulty. And, like, sometimes when you're running these marathons or training for them, training is even harder than the marathon half the time. And you're sitting there saying, like, shit, I just got off of work, worked, a full work week, and I got to go out and run 32 miles today because that's on the training plan. You just got to go do it.
You just do it.
The problem is usually when you do it, halfway through it, you're like, this is great. Nothing I'd rather be doing.
It's getting over that.
It's like anything.
Mindset of like.
It's like when people don't want to go to the gym. Put your shoes on, get in the car. You'll be fine.
F and go.
Yeah.
You did talk. I have to throw this in because I know you talked about you biked the Camino or something like that. Like you said that was like a changing point in your life, or no?
I'd say the biggest changing, like once I did. So when I quit my job as an accountant, my thought was I was going to quit, go do this trail, and then come back and go find a job doing probably the same thing. Quickly they're in it. I'm like, I'm never doing this shit again. Like I'm good at things I like to do, and then I stopped that. That was definitely the most changing. And at that point, that's when I was like, if it sounds good, I'm doing it. So I was actually signed up to do a triathlon in Alaska, and I was kind of starting to train for that. And I have a friend here. I used to work at the Breakers, the resort down in Palm Beach, and I have a friend who I'm still friends with to this day. And he was like the sales director there, and randomly he invited me. He's like, hey, I'm going to ride my bike from Jacksonville back down to Jupiter this weekend. You want to go? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? Again, that impulsiveness. I was like, sure, I'll do it. So we did it. It was brutal. To save the long story, it was brutal.
The wind?
So the first day we had a tailwind. So we went from Jacksonville to Daytona. We only did 110 miles because we got a cheap room. So we decided that was more important than getting more miles in. And then the next day we had I think it was 180 miles, 175 miles, something like that. Yeah. Headwind the entire way. We didn't get in until I think probably around midnight. We started early in the morning. But after we did that, the next week, he was like, hey, I have this trip planned. I want you to consider coming with me. And I was like, what is it? He's like, I want to go fly into Santiago, which is where the Camino ends. And we're going to go bike east. So we're doing reverse. And he has family in a place in a little area called Sète in the south of France. So he's like, I want to ride from there to there, and we'll kind of follow the Camino. So I was like, I got a triathlon. I can't do bowls. I was like, that sounds way better. So I went and did that. So it was me, him, and another guy that he met, which is so funny how the word's small. This guy hiked the PCT, the third dude, who I never met before until I met him in Santiago. He hiked the PCT the same year I did. Wow. Never met him. He was in front of me just a little bit. We knew a lot of the same people.
What a cool coincidence.
So the three of us, we rode our bikes. We did a hotel tour. So we were staying in beds, not camping out and stuff. But we rode our bikes from Western Spain. And my friend stopped in France, but the other guy and I, we ended up going all the way to Italy. And then I had to go home from there.
And did that shift you in any way, or you already, from your first challenge up the West Coast?
I mean, it definitely had its challenges. At that point, I didn't start cycling and riding my bike a lot until 2020.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was just riding bikes around Florida, so it's super flat.
Plus, you're during COVID doing this, no?
Yeah. I was riding a lot during COVID. But I never rode hills. So I got to Europe and I started having to ride hills, and I was like, oh, this is different. And I was the slowest guy out there for the first probably 2 weeks, getting crushed. Every day we'd get into the hostel.
I biked the Pyrenees Mountains. I get it.
Yeah.
I feel like I was going.
Luckily, by the time I got to the Pyrenees, I got a little stronger and I was able to enjoy it. But yeah.
It's beautiful, though.
It's amazing. And it's another one of those things, kind of what we were talking about before, though. You always hear stupid shit oh, the French are annoying, the French are assholes, this, that, and the other. There's so many nice people.
Amazing. I know.
People, when you generally meet them on an individual basis, are always pretty great. You obviously meet your sour apples and kind of things like that, but generally people are really nice to you.
I agree. Any besides? Because you're doing the ultra. Is that the next challenge?
So last summer I did the Continental Divide, which is basically a similar version of the PCT. In my opinion, it's a little longer. It's a little more difficult in my opinion. The trails
So you did that last year.
I did that last year.
And what's next? We don't know yet.
I got the puppy, so I'm working on the puppy.
Oh, yeah. Puppy. And the 100-miler.
And I got the 100-miler.
And where is that?
It's in Daytona. Well, I'm sorry. It starts in Jacksonville, ends in Daytona.
I'm going to come watch. When is that?
December.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to bring my daughter. Do you have a team when you do that? Because I know when I watch, some people have teams, some people don't. So.
Yeah, so I kind of, when I did the first 100-miler that I did, I made a mistake because it was the first one I ever did, and there was too many pacers. There was a lot of people that wanted to be involved, and I was like, yeah, sure, come, the more the merrier.
But it didn't really help.
It doesn't work because, you got to remember, not only am I running for at least 24 hours, but you have 4 or 5 people at this point in a car together, not sleeping.
Yeah.
They're going to get on each other's nerves too.
Oh, yeah.
So there were some problems.
Yeah, of course.
So now
you had random. So like they all.
I knew
together.
Everybody, but they all had to mesh for that long together, and it definitely it gets to the point where you're running and you're dealing with their fucking drama, and you're like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. So now the teams are very small and light.
Slim.
Yeah, and
chosen.
Like you said before, you have to have somebody who will keep your feet to the fire, not give you the easy way out, but also look out for you in the sense and not let you kill yourself.
Yeah.
So you have to have that nice mix of people that you can trust in that sense. Generally, people, though, I found will always give you the option out. So it's more on you.
Well, that's what I was talking about with the 29-0.
That's what I mean. That's what I was kind of alluding to.
I was like, I kick myself. I was in this opportunity. I put training time. Of course I could do more.
Yeah.
It pisses me off. So, yes. And yeah. Okay. So last question. I talk about imprint, and I think you're just an extraordinary individual, especially in this area, because I don't meet a lot of people when I'm in Truckee, Park City, there's always people.
Yeah.
But here I don't meet a lot of people that are doing what you're doing. And we talk about impact or imprint and the importance, you living into who you are and choosing to be that. What's the imprint that you hope to leave on the people that you touch? It could be on your journeys or whatever.
Yeah, in terms of people not on my journey, I feel like, when you're doing those hikes, you have a lot of like-minded people. They've already made the commitment to leave whatever they were doing to do this. But with my friends and people that I know, people going through school, I'm always like, if it doesn't feel right early, it's probably not. There was warning signs for me, when I was in school doing accounting, but I kind of ignored them because I had my eye on the prize. So it took me some more time to get through it to figure it out that it wasn't for me. So I just hope people do what they actually like to do. I also think and this is different for everybody. And some people, money is the motivator. It's fun for them to accumulate it and get more things. But for me personally, I found that it does nothing for me. The more I have, it almost just stresses me out more. It's just okay, how am I going to lose this? Or how's this going to get burned out or not do the right investment or whatever is going to happen? Just focus on the things that you want.
Yeah, and then things will come if you're aligned with who you are. It's supposed to. It's the way you signed up for the... Yeah. How the hell do you go in and go research and the permit is right there that day?
The way I ended up at the Breakers was I quit my job, did the PCT, and I knew I wanted to work in a coffee shop. That was because I wanted to open my own up. So I was looking around, and I did not want to work at the Breakers. I was like, I want to work for a place I work at now, a little mom and pop place, high quality everything. And I interviewed for a bunch of places. Obviously, people were somewhat interested. They thought I was what the hell's the CPA doing here?
Yeah.
And the Breakers, they just did a good job. They have a really well-run organization. They're good people, and they kind of got me. And I was thinking about it, and I was well, I got 5 offers from these different coffee shops around town. Why don't I go give the Breakers a shot? Oh, the other thing that sucked me in was they had these trainers coming in from New York who own this really nice fancy roastery in New York, and they were going to do a 2-week training. There was a piece in my mind where I was if I don't like it here, I'll just take that training for 2 weeks and then quit and then go get one of these other jobs. I'll just take the training. But the second I got in the door, they kind of wrote me in. So I ended up working in their coffee shop for 7 or 8 months, something like that. And then I was getting bored. It wasn't run the way I would like to run it. It was really the problem. That's why I like working where I work now, because everything is so organized. We take quality seriously. But when I was working there was
it was casual. It was,
at the end of the day, you have a bunch of 17, 18, well, I shouldn't say, they're 18, 19-year-old kids, and they're there to make some money so they can pay for school or do whatever they got to do. They're not passionate about it. And like where I work now, pretty much every person that works there like likes coffee, likes wants to make sure it's coming out
likes
right.
the culture. That's what I mean. I go there just because I love the people that go
Yeah,
there.
so you don't have like this like disconnect between the Breakers is a big organization. There's levels to all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I got bored, and I was basically like, I got really close with my boss there too. I'm still friends with her to this day, and I was like, I don't want to leave the Breakers, but I don't know what I want to do. Like, I don't know where I want to go in this place, because like I don't see myself here, I don't see myself there, but like let's figure something out. So they put me at the front desk for a little bit. She's like senior executive in the company, so she like talked to a few people, and they were like, one of the directors came over to me and he was like, why don't we put you at the front desk? I know it's not gonna be what you want to do forever, but like you'll see all the operations of the company, and you can kind of maybe then decide what avenue works for you. So I was like, okay. So I did that until COVID hit, and then once COVID hit, my boss came. I was working at Carve, and I was going to go hike the Colorado Trail, which is like a section of the Continental Divide, which is what I did this past year, kind of like the John Muir version of the PCT. And she called me, and she was like, I have this job for you, and I want you to be the operations manager of the retail department. And I was like, shit. Like, I went back and forth with her for a while, basically because like, is this really what I want to do? I'm back at a desk again, like sitting down working on a computer. Is this really what I want to do? It's a good opportunity. I really like her, like, and respect her a lot. She's a CPA too, so she kind of had a similar little bit of thinking path to me. And I remember my dad's like, you're so lucky, this, that, and I'm like, bitch, I'm not lucky. Like, I worked for this. Like, she knew how hard I worked at the coffee shop, just doing like medial task. Like, I didn't cut corners. I did everything the way I was supposed to be doing it, and then some. And then I went to the front desk, and like, I wasn't the best person there, but I took care of what I needed to take care of, and like, I did it the way I thought I should do it best. And then doors opened up for me, and then I got that job. That was a great job, probably like my most enjoyable job I ever had. But I almost didn't take it, because I almost thought like, this is just not going to be where it goes. I pretty much left that job just because I wanted to move to California, just because I wanted to be in California.
So I look at you, like, listening to your story or your journey, I look at you like you really are an explorer of life, like from jobs to being out in nature and pushing your edge. Because even just that, like that job that you're talking about isn't like, doesn't scream, Jimmy,
no,
come to me. But you gave it a chance, and somewhere you're learning something from it.
Yeah, I think a lot of that credit goes to my boss at the time. She is just like probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And like her ability to read me and be like, and she did exactly what I mentioned with that CPA firm I worked at. I saw how hard she worked and how dedicated she was to doing what she was doing. I didn't want to make her life any harder. Anything I can do to take something off her plate, I wanted to do, because like she spent more time there than she needed to. That's like a good way. She knew that was going to.
But she also saw you. She also like saw who you are.
Oh yeah, she definitely
I think that's part of like you giving more.
Totally.
And like, you know, most organizations don't see, they look at the person as the job, not.
But she also knew I couldn't sit down. So she would be like, she would give me some stupid tasks sometimes, like, it would be like something where you just had to go to like all 15 stores. And like at the Breakers, there's a bunch of them centralized, but then we have a few off property and stuff too. So it might take an hour and a half. And she'd be like, here, go hand these out. Anyone could do it, but she knew I needed to get out of the desk.
Like itch.
So she was great. And and I still worked at the Breakers when I did that trip in Europe. She let me go.
So cool.
Yeah.
So really the imprint you're telling the listeners is, if it doesn't feel right, there's a reason.
Yeah. I mean, you got to hold yourself somewhat accountable. Like, you got to do things to like your best of ability. But, if you're half-assing something, ask yourself, like, at least for me, I always realize if I'm half-assing something, it's probably because I don't like it.
Good advice.
Because if I like it, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah. I love it. And I think you're challenging us all to think. I don't know if I'll do a 100-mile race, but I definitely will challenge myself.
That doesn't have to be your outlet. It could be anything,
No, I love it. I think it teaches us about how we think, of what if we're going to show up when it's hard. And I miss that because I was always the athlete. Yeah. And like part of that, I also think the older we get, it's like we don't find opportunities to push our edge. Fitness, anything. I mean, it could be just like not opening up your phone. for the first hour of the morning. That's a challenge because most people just do.
Yeah.
But I could talk to you forever. I just love the way you're living and the way you're choosing, because you show up, you're all in, no matter coffee, biking. You just show up as a good person. I could feel your energy, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank
Anything
you.
left to say for this group?
I don't think so. I mean, I just don't feel like I'm the guru that should be giving all the ansers, but this is just
You're
what's
not
worked.
a guru. You're
This is
sharing your story.
Yeah, this is just what's worked for me.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's exactly. I don't have anybody's
Yeah.
answers. The part of it is figuring out.
Yeah.
And this is. I love that he says that, because anybody who's listening, we don't have your answers. It's you exploring what works for you.
yeah.
And
I mean, like, most people I think would look at my life and maybe say like, yeah, he's not doing what he should be doing. But I can say I'm like as happy as I've ever been.
I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and like,
And I love it. And that's why because you're not the norm.
like I said before, I don't like. It doesn't seem like I'm the type of person that's really driven to work. I'm working 6 days a week right now, and I'm loving it.
And you do it with pride.
Yeah, I'm not
You're
going
like,
in
awesome.
like,
Yeah,
I'm going in
exactly.
like, tomorrow I work at the bike shop. I'm like, yes, I work at the bike shop tomorrow. And then like when I go to the coffee shop, I'm like, I do like opening more than I like closing. I
agree with that.
So when I'm opening, I'm like, yes, I open tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have that.
Well, thank you and taking the time and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
And I hope you inspired anybody listening, and all you listening, check out Journey to June for other episodes. But Jimmy's challenging us today to like listen in, check in. Like, are you doing things that make you actually like fueled? And are you challenging yourself to see what you're capable of? So thanks so much for listening.